we delve into an extraordinarily important historical period, the Age of Discovery, which intersects profoundly with the Renaissance. These centuries represent a crucial crossroads where intellectual aspirations merged with the thirst for knowledge and new trade routes, forever redefining the course of global history. The economic consequences of this era were titanic, shaping not only the destinies of nations but also the entire structure of world trade. This phase was not merely a geographical expansion, but a true revolution that overwhelmed every aspect of human life. It is a chapter in history that embodies a crucial turning point, both for Europe and for the entire planet. The previously limited and Eurocentric worldview began to expand, embracing horizons unimaginable until then, minds open to new possibilities. The transformations were profound and radical. We are witnessing an epochal shift in the worldview, moving from a universe perceived as finite and static to one that is boundless and dynamic, full of unknowns and opportunities to be explored and conquered. Cultural values also underwent significant change. New ideas and philosophies began to emerge, challenging old certainties and paving the way for a new era of critical thinking and discovery of oneself and the world around us. At the same time, a decisive reconfiguration of economic power occurred. The Atlantic nations began their rise, challenging the traditional Mediterranean powers for supremacy in a play of power that would redraw the global geopolitical and commercial map for centuries to come. The legacy of this period is immense and enduring. The foundations of the modern world, with its economic, social, and political dynamics, were laid precisely during these centuries of fervent exploration and profound cultural renewal, which continue to influence our reality today. The Renaissance played a crucial and essential role in paving the way for all these epochal transformations. It was not just an artistic explosion, but a true cultural and intellectual revolution that affected every aspect of knowledge and life. This movement was by its very nature a cultural revolution, a wave of renewal that swept away the vestiges of the Middle Ages to embrace a new vision of humanity and its place in the universe. It was a ferment of ideas that overturned dogmas and opened new avenues of thought. The intellectual focus of the Renaissance centered on the rediscovery of classical knowledge, drawing on the wisdom of the ancient Greeks and Romans. This revival was not a simple imitation, but a springboard for new syntheses and the development of original and bold thought. A fundamental principle that emerged from this rediscovery was the placing of humanity at the center of the universe. Humans were no longer merely passive elements of creation, but active protagonists, capable of shaping their own destiny and understanding the world through reason and experience. This led to the adoption of an anthropocentric vision, where human beings, with their abilities, aspirations, and thirst for knowledge, became the measure of all things. This perspective overturned the medieval theocentric vision, promoting individualism and freedom of thought. The spirit fostered was one of inquiry and exploration, a relentless curiosity that drove exploration of every field of knowledge, from philosophy to science, from art to geography. Nothing was taken for granted, every dogma was open to analysis and verification. This critical and investigative spirit spurred profound innovation in every field. Human inventiveness reached extraordinary heights, leading to discoveries and inventions that would radically change the way we live and interact with the world. At the same time, the Renaissance strengthened faith in human potential. Renaissance man believed in his ability to achieve excellence, to overcome limitations, and to create beauty and knowledge. It was an era of great optimism and faith in the infinite possibilities of human ingenuity. This drive for progress manifested itself in extraordinary advances in art, science, and technology. From Leonardo to Michelangelo, from Copernicus to Galileo, the most brilliant minds of the time laid the foundations for revolutions that would shape the future of Western thought. In short, the Renaissance created the intellectual tools and mindset necessary for exploration. It wasn't just faster ships or more accurate maps, but an inexhaustible thirst for knowledge and an unshakable belief that the world was there to be discovered and understood. The great explorations were not an isolated phenomenon, but a direct and inevitable consequence of the spirit of renewal that animated the Renaissance. They were the embodiment of that thirst for knowledge and that faith in human potential we have discussed. The European motivations that drove these ventures were complex and multifaceted, primarily a thirst for knowledge. They wanted to verify the hypotheses of ancient geographers and push beyond the boundaries of the known world to map and understand the vastness of the planet. This intellectual drive was accompanied by a pressing economic goal, the pursuit of new wealth. The land routes to the east had become dangerous and costly due to Ottoman expansion, and alternative routes were sought to access precious spices, silks, and gold. No less important was a profound religious mission, the desire to spread Christianity. For many European monarchies, colonial expansion was also seen as an opportunity to convert new populations and counter the advance of Islam. It is in this context that we find the memorable feat of Christopher Columbus, who completed his Atlantic crossing in 1492. What for him was a voyage to the Indies turned out to be the discovery of the Americas, a continent whose existence was unknown to Europe. A few years later, in 1498, Vasco da Gama's expedition opened the sea route to India, circumnavigating Africa. This direct route allowed Europe direct access to Eastern markets, bypassing Arab and Venetian intermediaries and radically changing trade dynamics. The significance of these discoveries was immense. They opened up entirely new worlds to European influence. Entire continents, with their cultures, resources, and populations, became part of a global network of interactions and, sadly, domination. These voyages ushered in an era of global interconnection, a process that continues today. Different parts of the world previously separated by vast oceans and natural barriers were brought into contact, giving rise to a single and complex global economy. The overall impact of these explorations and discoveries was far reaching and generated unprecedented economic transformations. The world not only expanded geographically but also changed its internal structure, creating new hierarchies of power and wealth. One of the most obvious consequences was the geographic shift in the economic center of gravity, which shifted inexorably from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic. The ancient Italian maritime republics lost their centrality to the new powers bordering the ocean. This change was fueled by multiple factors. Control of new ocean trade routes became crucial, offering previously unthinkable profit opportunities to those who could dominate and exploit them efficiently. Furthermore, access to new resources, abundant and often unknown in Europe, was a powerful driving force. Precious metals, new food crops like potatoes and corn, and raw materials of all kinds flowed into the old continent, fueling unprecedented economic growth. However, these resources were not acquired peacefully but through systematic colonial exploitation of indigenous territories and populations. This often brutal model of exploitation became the basis of European wealth for centuries to come. As a result, we witnessed the rise of the Atlantic powers. Portugal, Spain, England, and the Netherlands emerged as global trading leaders. These nations, thanks to their geographical position and exploratory boldness, dominated the seas and world trade. This is the context in which mercantile capitalism emerged, an economic system based on the accumulation of capital and the expansion of trade. A key role was played by the enormous influx of precious metals, gold and silver, from the Americas. This flow of wealth spurred the development of new financial instruments, such as joint stock companies and stock exchanges. These mechanisms allowed for the raising of large amounts of capital to finance increasingly ambitious and profitable maritime ventures, spreading risk and opportunity. The growth of the global market was another defining feature of this period. Goods, ideas, and people began to circulate globally, creating a network of exchange that closely linked different continents and distant peoples, though often unevenly. Unfortunately, this generation of wealth also relied on the unacceptable exploitation of colonial resources. The transatlantic slave trade, in particular, represents one of the darkest chapters of this period, with millions of people torn from their lands and forced into slavery to fuel the colonial economy. This system contributed to the consolidation of the European power's economic dominance over the rest of the world. Europe positioned itself at the center of a global commercial and financial network, exerting a dominant influence that would shape the following centuries. The key features of this new economic system included private ownership of the means of production, the constant pursuit of profit as the primary driver of economic activity, and capital accumulation as the primary goal of economic agents. All these elements taken together laid the foundation for the modern capitalist world. The dynamics, institutions, and mindsets that emerged during this era continue to define our global economy, making the Age of Discovery an essential study period for understanding the present.